Hello everybody, it's Carl Moorman, your garden guy, and look around me. Yes, I'm back at the propagation station, and today I'm showing you all my favorite tips and tricks to grow the easiest and the fastest rooting vegetables and herbs right from cuttings. Now, today, Macro Home and Garden have been friendly enough to share some of their rooting hormones with us. Look at these beautiful guys. So I'm gonna jump in here and make some wonderful tip cuttings or some semi-hardwood and softwood cuttings with this terrific rooting hormone from Macro Home and Garden. Let's get into it. Top herbs and vegetables to grow from cuttings at home, quick and easy. So, as you can see in front of me here, I've already went out and done all of my sort of shopping in the garden for my little cuttings. Now, what you want to do is sort of make sure that once you harvest your cutting material, you put it into water immediately. And I always use this comparison. Imagine, go talk to any UFC fighter or those boxers there. Ask them, before they get into that ring, they are at the prime of their condition. They condition themselves to be at the very best just before they get into that ring, so they have the best chance to win that fight. Hey, very similar when it comes to cuttings. Difference is, they've got to win the fight for life. Yes, remember, we're creating life out of little cuttings here. So, likewise, we also want to make sure that our cuttings have the very best conditions around them before they go into the fight for life, so that we make very sure we get healthy roots and as a result, healthy plants. Now, today, Macro Home and Garden have been friendly enough to share some of their rooting hormones with us. Look at these beautiful guys. We've got number 1 for the softwood or the tip cuttings. Then we've got number 2, which is your semi-hardwood cuttings. And then number 3, which is the hardwood cuttings. Now, the plants we're going to be making cuttings from today, we're only going to be using number 1 and number 2. In other words, softwood cuttings and tip cuttings and semi-hardwood cuttings. Now, the second part to getting these little guys in the prime condition to win that fight is to make sure you take them from a very healthy plant. That's it. Make sure the mother plant where you've made these cuttings off of is also very healthy and there's no diseases. Now, when you're taking your cutting material from your mother plant, you want to make very sure that every plant has its own little bowl. Hey, this is just a bowl with some water and some basic sterilant, which is going to keep these guys nice and fungally free. Right, so make sure that every plant you harvest your cutting material from has its own bowl. Very important, because that keeps the sicknesses apart. Okay, now these guys have gone straight into the water right after harvesting them, and the reason for that is so they don't lose all their moisture before we plant them. Okay, really important, because we want them in optimal condition. Okay, and here I've got some, oopsie, we don't want that happening. I've got some soil medium already in a planting tray. Now, what I like to do when working with cuttings is to work with a cellular tray. That means a tray which has multiple cells in it, and that allows your plant to grow individually and form a nice little root ball before we plant them out. Okay, now I've got that already prepared here. We're going to be using the number 1, right? The Macro Home and Garden rooting hormone, number 1. Okay, pop this guy open. Ooh, look at that. Of course, first we've got to make cuttings before we add the rooting hormone. And what I like to do is sort of just pour a little bit of it out into the lid, because you don't want to contaminate this entire jar, right? So I'm just going to pour a little bit of this rooting hormone for the softwood cuttings into its lid. Can you see that there very nicely? Right, finally we get to climb into our plant material. Okay, here we go. Now I'm going to pull this guy out. Now you can see there we have made the cutting. I've made very sure we have removed the plant material, that I've made a cut below the node as well as above the node. Why? Because that's where growth happens on your plant. So you want one node for root growth, one node for foliage growth. Pretty simple. Number 1, or one of the most important rules when making cuttings, is that you never want flowering parts of the plant on your cuttings. Why? Because they're going to make flowers and not plants. Right, we want plants. So I'm going to carefully nip the very tip of it off, because that's a little flower forming over there. get rid of that. Look at that. There you can see two very definite branches and the node. Okay, we want to remove all of this excess plant material because it's only going to waste the plant's energy. And we want this little node here to be forming our roots. Pinch this guy off here as well, like that. And this is the part I'm after. This is the little bit that's going to become my cutting. Right, next step is to plant this little guy. And I'm just going to make a hole right in the center of our little planting cell. I'm going to insert it in and I'm going to firm him down right in the middle. Beautiful. And look at that, a beautiful basil cutting that's going to take root in no time. As far as possible, you want to try and keep your cuttings the same thickness and the same size and height. You want a uniform tray of cuttings. That way you know they're all going to be rooting at the same time, and you also know they're going to need the same watering. So they'll need similar water requirements. Larger plants need more water than smaller ones. That's why you want them to be uniform. Now, what you want to do is, as with most cuttings, right after planting them, you're going to water it in. And then he's going onto a windowsill or in the greenhouse. I sometimes even put them in sort of a semi-shady spot outside so that they're already acclimatized to the natural environment outside. If you do have these guys root indoors or in, say, a greenhouse, you need to make sure that you harden them off by slowly exposing them 2 or 3 hours a day to the harsh conditions outdoors. Otherwise, you plant a little plant which is tender from being in the greenhouse, and the first bit of sun kills him right out. Okay, top herbs and vegetables to grow from cuttings at home, quick and easy, and in no time you can have all these beautiful plants to use either in the garden or give to some mates or even sell some of them, you know? Up to you. That's my quick guide on how to grow herbs and vegetables from cuttings with a terrific rooting hormone for macro, home and garden. Thank you for your time and spending it here with me and Macro in the garden today. I look forward to seeing you on the next video. If you've enjoyed this, please consider liking and subscribing. Until next time, happy gardening and happy propagation. Click the link above or below for the rest of this cutting series.